Douglas Carswell is a fascinating guy. Remember, he was with us just about a week or so ago. We're talking about the issues down in Jackson, Mississippi. And he is a very proud British gentleman, served in the House of Commons for more than a decade. And I wanted to reach out to him to get some sense from him what he's thinking about. And Douglas, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be on your show again, Jeff.
The pleasure is mine. It's, for me as an American, an interesting situation. As I said, I'm not a British subject, and so she wasn't, quote, my queen, but I don't know, she's been part of my life for 5 decades. What's your sense as a proud son of Great Britain?
It is very sad. I mean, she's been queen since February 1952. To put that in context, she's been queen since Harry Truman was in the White House. So to explain what this means to Britain, to an American audience, imagine that you had the same head of state representing and personifying America since Harry Truman was around, and imagine if today, sadly, they died. It would be a huge deal. No one, or very few people in Britain, can remember adult life without her being queen. And so it is a very big deal.
One of the things that will be interesting, I know as an American, I'm going to ask you, Douglas, for the first time, I will hear people stand up and sing God Save the King. It's going to be very different.
Yeah, I mean, when the Queen dies, the Queen is dead, God save the King. The King becomes king right away. And it does feel strange. It feels particularly strange for me as a student of history to have a King Charles. I mean, last time there was a King Charles, it didn't end entirely well, but I'm sure Charles III will respect the English Revolution, which the precursor, you might say, to the American Revolution. I'm sure he will do a great job. But the Queen met, I think, every U.S. president, with the exception of, I think it was Lyndon Johnson. I think she had good judgment for some reason, never got around to meeting him, but she met all the others. And, I'm a huge fan. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a criticism of the American Constitution. I think the American Constitution is a near perfect document. And what the Founding Fathers did was magnificent. But in having the head of state and the political leader as one and the same person, it makes it rather difficult in America to boo your government but cheer your country.
Yes.
The genius of the Queen is that it doesn't matter who you vote for. You can be favor of the Queen. She's a unifying figure. She's above and transcends politics. And that is something that I think Britons are really grateful for.
You mentioned he could be King Charles III, but he has the option, right, to take a different name?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I think there was a sort of 18-month delay between the Queen becoming Queen and her being formally coronated. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the plans will be on this occasion. It may be 6 months, it may be longer. I mean, he may become King Charles III. He may be something different. I just don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Now, talk about the separation between head of government and head of state. The idea, and you put it so eloquently, God bless you, you could boo the government, but you would cheer the nation. I think that's an enviable position to be in.
I'm a huge fan of America, but one thing about America that makes me sad is the way that I meet people who are vociferously anti maybe Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I sometimes listen to the fierce political debate in America, and I think, look, at least respect whoever it is who's president of the United States, not because you voted for them, but because they're the office holder. And what the British system did, it allowed people to, you can vote for who you like, you can support the government or loathe the government, but you can all cheer the Queen. I mean, fundamentally, when the British came up with their system and the American Founding Fathers came up with their system, it was a different answer to the same question. How do you prevent one family dominating power? The British system was to, in effect, have a monarch with no political power, but complete authority, and there's a difference between authority and power. The Americans came up with, some might say, a better system. It kind of harked back to the Roman idea of competing elected officials, and you built a Senate on the banks of the Potomac, inspired by Rome. But both of them are attempts to answer this fundamental question: how do you make sure that no one becomes too powerful? And I'm a huge admirer of the American system, but I think Elizabeth II made the British system really work and work really well. She's known dozens of prime ministers. They come and go, but you've always had the Queen.
And how about 2 days before she passes away, she's accepting the resignation of Boris Johnson, inviting Liz Truss to form the new government. Her dedication to that role was just epic. I mean, it was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, she dedicated her life to serving her country. She took an oath at her coronation, and she took it very seriously and very literally. In this day and age, the idea of duty is often regarded as old-fashioned and slightly fuddy-duddy. Mm-hmm. I think actually she shows the importance of duty, particularly duty in public office. This idea that it's not all about you, that you're passing through an institution that's bigger than you and that will outlast you. And I sometimes think if our politicians today had a bit of that sense of duty towards public office, we would all be better served.
I'm going to remind everybody that Douglas Carswell is joining us. He served for more than a decade in the British House of Commons. He's now the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. We chatted with him just about a week or so ago with that water crisis. And I want to get an update on that, Douglas, but I'd also like to ask you about the anti-monarchists, because there are certain parts of the Commonwealth, Australia and New Zealand, seem to be really, really adamant about this in certain sectors, that they want to be republics. And I've been looking at some of the social media chatter, and they say, well, this is the time. Everybody knew Queen Elizabeth for 70 years. Now's the time to make our push to just ditch it entirely. What do you take from that?
I wouldn't be remotely offended if other countries decided to become republics. I mean, after all, you guys decided to do this in 1776, and I have to say it's worked out phenomenally well. I wouldn't be remotely offended. I don't think anyone in their right minds could be remotely offended. I would just urge a word of caution. Don't replace it with something worse. If you are an Australian and you don't like the current Prime Minister, would you like her to be your president? If you are an Australian and you didn't vote for the current lot in charge, Albanese, I think his name is, would you like him to be president? I look at my own country, Britain, and, I think of some of the prime ministers we've had in the past 20 years. And the idea that they would be my head of state, frankly, repels me. So I by all means, create a republic, but make sure you replace it with something that's even better. Sometimes in human affairs, what is rational and based on reason is not always better. Here's an interesting thought experiment. Look at all movie representations of the future. Think of those Star Wars films. Those Star Wars films are peopled with emperors and kings. Maybe there's something deep in the human psyche to which the idea of a hereditary monarch appeals. If you can have a hereditary monarch, but make sure that it can't be corrupted, make sure it has no power, make sure that power remains dispersed, maybe that is an enviable system. And if you destroy it in the name of reason, like the French did, you may end up with a French version of a French republic rather than the American system of the American republic. So by all means, become a republic, but make sure you model yourself on America, not France.
Well, I think that's one of the things that unites Americans and British, are joint contempt for the French. I mean, it's just the way it is. But Douglas, you mentioned Great Britain, and this is where we always get into a discussion, we as Americans. She was the Queen of England. The Queen of Great Britain. No, the Queen of the United Kingdom. So we talk about the United Kingdom, obviously, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. With her passing, does that remain as it's been, or is that also going to be kind of a jumping off point? I guess I would point initially to Scotland. Would this be their chance to say, thanks, we're out?
Well, Scotland had a referendum on a vote on whether or not to become an independent country a few years ago, and it was defeated. Yeah. Don't take what you read in your Twitter timeline as representative of what people in Scotland think. I'm basically a Scot, ethnically and by heritage. Oh, okay. And I think most Scots realise they're better off in Britain. The United Kingdom is England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. Right. She was the Queen of the whole of the United Kingdom. King Charles has now King of the United Kingdom and indeed King of Canada and Australia and various other parts around the world. But look, I mean, fundamentally, it's for people to decide how they, as the American founding fathers understood, power comes from the people who are in possession of inalienable rights. It's for people to decide how best they're governed. When I'm in Britain, I think that the best form of government is the British system. When I'm in America, I think the American system is the best form of government. There's much to be said for both.
Well, I'll tell you, we're happy to have you here in America, just by the way. We really are. I mean, it's such a great voice. Douglas, can I ask you just for a quick update? Last time we chatted with you, because you are in Jackson, Mississippi, was this terrible, terrible water crisis. Is there some sort of a patch, some sort of a fix that we're seeing down there?
Yeah. Thanks almost entirely to the state governor, who incidentally will get absolutely no credit from the media for it because he's a Republican. Thanks to the state governor, we now have running water. We're still not allowed to drink it. And indeed, when I turned on the tap in my office, the brown sludge that came out looked pretty undrinkable. But there is now running water, thanks to the state government. I hope that this crisis prompts people in the city to recognize that actually, we need to have some basic levels of competence. An American city in 2022 should be able to manage running water.
It absolutely should. Douglas, I thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm going to tell you? Keep the phone handy because we're going to call and hopefully you'll answer. We'll chat about some other stuff as well.
There's nothing I'd rather do than talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is Douglas Carswell, former member of the House of Commons, spent 12 years actually as a member of Parliament. Now is based in Jackson, Mississippi, heads up the Center for Public Policy down there. A nice guy and a really smart fellow. And I do love the idea that he's looking at the two systems, the American and the British system, and he's taken some good stuff from each.